Hey everyone, it's me again, and go on, my cat. Anyway, today I'm gonna be doing like something different. I am, not just a writer, I'm a reader as well, as I assume many of you are, and I'm not lacking content, I guess, but where I am right now in my current work in progress, it's very hard for me to vlog it, and until I get to a point where vlogging is easier, I thought, I can supplement with book reviews, in case you care about my very esteemed opinion on certain books. I don't know why you would. But anyway, so this is kind of the first in what could possibly become a series in the future, where it's just going to be like quickie reviews. I say quickie because I intend for it to be kind of short and not too in-depth. Basically just I liked it or I didn't like it. Here's why. I recommend it or I don't recommend it. So the first book in this series that I'm going to be reviewing is Joe Hill's NOS4A2, which is also an AMC series if you are not aware. Right off the bat, I'm gonna tell you, if you have any interest at all after seeing like the summary of the show, don't bother with the show. Just read the book. It's much better. So I wrote some notes because I'm very forgetful. This was on my TBR list for a long time, but I'm very cheap and it was never at my library. Like the only Joe Hill book I ever saw at my library was Horns, which is also one I want to read, but it wasn't like I wanted to read this one more, and I'm very particular with my books. It's probably the autism. But anyways, I'm trying to call this a quickie review, so let's get into the book. First of all, the prologue, awesome. It's super creepy, it sets the scene and it sets up Charlie Manx, so you know kind of what you're in for and what to expect. And honestly, this was a book that I picked up and I just couldn't put down. Like, I was like angry to have to put it down because I would take it to work with me and read it on my breaks, and then my timer would go off because that's the only way I can keep track of my breaks because, I'm an adult. But my timer would go off and I would get so angry that I had to go back to work and stop reading. And I devoured this like a vampire, you might say, like a NOS4A2. It only took me, maybe a week and a half to read it, and that's with work and everything else I was doing. All in all, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well written. I thought the characters were pretty great, most of them, and satisfying story from beginning to end. It wasn't perfect, and I did make a list of good things and a list of bad things. And I'm gonna start with the good things just because that's how I want to do it. I know most people will try to deliver bad news first, but we're gonna start with the good. So first of all, I think this is a really unique and clever idea that goes much deeper, because when you first read the synopsis, I'm not gonna read it to you, this is a quickie review. I'm not gonna read the synopsis, but it mentions Christmas Land and basically Charlie Manx's like MO, but when you read the synopsis, you really only get a feel for Charlie Manx and his wraith and the character of Vic McQueen, but you don't really, like, there's layers with the whole creatives that have these knives that can essentially cut the fabric of reality, and they have their inscapes, and it was just a very original idea, and I thought it was awesome. I wanted to know more about, like, what can a knife be? Can a knife be anything? Like, for Vic, it was her bicycle. For Maggie, it's her Scrabble tiles. And, for Charlie Manx, it's his car, the Wraith. But it was just so interesting. Like, could my pen be a knife? And I could write my way into my own inscape. Very original idea. I loved it. I know I already said it's well written. You you would expect that from Stephen King's son. I don't want to compare him too much to Stephen King, but considering the fact that Stephen King is my favorite author of all time, I kind of feel like I have to. I don't know. I don't know if it's because I knew that Joe Hill is his son, but there were times when his writing felt very reminiscent of Stephen King's, but I will say it also feels more modern. So in a weird way, it's so similar, and yet he has his own modern touch, because I love Stephen King. But he's an older gentleman. He just turned 71, I think, and some of his ramblings can be a little bit too much in his books. And Joe Hill's rambling doesn't feel quite so old man-y. And I don't mean that as an insult, because like I said, I love Stephen King. I would die for Stephen King. But yeah, so very well written. He had things that made me laugh. He had things that, scared me. And I cried. It's been a long time since I've cried during a book. I think the last book I cried while reading was, and you can judge me, Allegiant by Veronica Roth. I know a lot of people hated that one, but I liked the whole trilogy. I may not have agreed with every single thing that happened in Allegiant, but I definitely was invested, and I remember crying my eyes out while I read it. But then this, I didn't cry a lot. It was just kind of towards the end. I won't give too many spoilers, but all this intense stuff was like happening. Someone died, and I wasn't even all that attached to the character, and it just happened so suddenly. And the reason that he died, the reason that they died, like, it just kind of really felt like a punch, it just caught me out of nowhere, so I started crying for that. And then the character of Lou Carmody, he is such a sincere and earnest character, and he just feels his emotions, and I really appreciate that in a male character. And, he was kind of the butt of a joke a lot of the time because he was fat, and his weight played a big kind of, like, one thing I've noticed about both Stephen King and now Joe Hill is that when a character is fat, like, they're always, like, being described by, their size or their shape, and it's like, we get it, they're fat, and so that would be, like, my only complaint, I guess. But Lou was such an earnest character, so genuine, and there's a scene where he essentially thinks, it's the end, and he's crying, and I just started crying right along with him, and I kind of had to put the book down. Oh, there's a fly in here, god dang it. I kind of had to put the book down and take a breather. While we get point of view chapters from other characters, Vic, of course, is the main character, and besides the fact that Vic McQueen sounds like a really awesome, like, comic book character or something, I liked her. And I know I probably sound kind of, like, confused, and that's because she wasn't at all a perfect character. She had a lot of flaws, she made a lot of mistakes, and she did things that I really didn't agree with, but, that was what made her feel so real, was that she was this flawed, misguided character just trying to do her best. So you definitely root for her even though she's not perfect, and I can appreciate characters like that, and she was just a good combination of tough and vulnerable at the same time. Sorry, I don't want to drag this out. Lou's chapters had a lot of, like, nerd references, and I definitely appreciated that. One big one is that, like, their son, her and Lou, their son is named, well, he goes by Wayne, but that's his middle name, and his first name is Bruce, so his name is Bruce Wayne, and it's just, I don't know, I like little things like that. I like to reference, like, nerd things in my writing, so it's nice to see other writers do that, and, as a nerd, I'm, all Captain America over here, like, I understood that reference, so I liked it. Another thing I liked was Charlie Manx, who has a cool name, by the way, Charles Talent Manx. Pretty cool, but he was like, just a good villain because he was creepy, and he was odd, and sometimes he would say things that was, hi kitty, kind of funny in a weird way. Like, I definitely wanted him to die. Like, he wasn't the kind of villain that, you want to see redeemed or something, but he was a good villain. Don't mess with it. He was a good villain, and written very well. His voice was very, stop! His voice was very, my cat is attacking the tripod, but, his voice was very clear, and I just appreciate that. Another thing I wanted to point out from my pros list is that Vic comes from a very dysfunctional family, and I think, don't even think about it, McMuffin. I think this book did a good job of showing that just because a family is dysfunctional doesn't mean it's always, you know, they always have downs. Like, I didn't like Vic's parents, but this book did try to show you that in a dysfunctional family there are both ups and downs, and Vic, her feelings for her parents were very, what's the word? Very messy, and I thought it felt really realistic, I guess, and, you know, it touches on, I guess, the what could have beens and the, you know, the potential for the McQueen family. Stop! I think anyone who comes from a dysfunctional family will tell you that, you know, sometimes you just can't hate your family, even when you feel like you should. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So now on to my few grievances. Back to me talking about how original and unique the idea was. It kind of left me wanting more. It wraps up the story of Vic McQueen and Charlie Manx. And sorry, I have to like treat my cat like he's a toddler because he keeps attacking the tripod for some reason. McLovin! Hey, stop being a butt! Don't even think about it. You are being bad. You're not gonna get to go to Christmas Land. And as inventive and as original as the story is, it really left me wanting, because it ties up Vic's story, and even Charlie Manx's story ends, but I want to know more about creatives and their knives and their inscapes, and I don't know if he's planning on writing anything else like in this universe, and that's a little disappointing because I really enjoy what he's created here, and it's just little things with the inscapes, like Vic's Shorterway Bridge and what the bats in the bridge represent, and basically, okay, go away. And so it being so unique and cool is both a pro and a con, unfortunately. These two I can't talk about without really getting into some spoilery territory. So the first one, as the synopsis states, let me double check that the synopsis says that. Oh no, it doesn't mention it. I thought it did. Well, spoilers, I guess. If you don't want any spoilers, even the mild kind, I guess, you know, turn us off now. But Vic's son, Wayne, gets taken by Charlie Manx, and on the journey to Christmas Land, the Wraith essentially drains the captive of their humanity, of their soul and sanity, and that's how Charlie Manx thrives, basically. He gets their humanity and stuff. So Wayne becomes his captive, and there's a part where a deceased character comes to him and kind of informs him that he needs to think backwards and talk backwards, because then, you know, then Charlie Manx can't understand him, or the Wraith can't understand him, something to that effect. And so poor Wayne he starts thinking things backwards, like not words, like the words are still like coherent and normal, it's just they're out of order. So like instead of like, I don't know, if you were to say to somebody like, hey, how are you? It would be more like, you how are hey, or something to that effect. And that was super interesting as well, but it wasn't utilized, in my opinion. I thought it was going to be a much bigger kind of, I guess, plot point, but then Wayne really only uses it once, and I guess, I don't know, I won't spoil it too much, but it was a concept that I thought was really interesting and was very underused, and that disappointed me personally. And then, okay, big spoiler for this one, like super big spoiler, okay? I warned you. Bing Partridge is an antagonist, and he's like Charlie Manx's assistant, his lackey and henchman, he has some kind of developmental issue. Like, it doesn't go into it in the book, but he just really wants to see Christmasland. He wants to go to Christmasland because Charlie Manx has convinced him, you know, it's Christmas every day there, you're always happy, you know, yada yada yada. So Bing essentially does whatever Charlie wants him to do because he wants to go to Christmasland. But Bing is also just a bad person, and he does a lot of bad shit, and spoilers, okay, last warning. Even though Bing gets killed, I was so let down because it happened so quickly. Like, he got one split second to realize that he had lost, basically, and that he was never, ever going to see Christmasland. And then, I guess, a split second of, yes, a horrible death, but it was a quick death nonetheless. And then his story was over, basically. And after all of the messed up shit he did, it just felt like he did not get his comeuppance. Like, he killed people, he raped people, you know, like, it was just awful. And I was pretty disappointed. Like, I was reading up to it, and I could tell it was coming. I mean, I feel like it's a given that a character like that isn't going to survive a story like this. So I was reading, and I was like, alright, you know, what's gonna happen to him? And then it happened, and it just felt very flat to me. I'm not saying I wanted to read, you know, a full chapter of him getting, like, I don't know, tortured, you know, Saw style or anything. It just would have been nice to, I guess, see his face, I don't know, when he found out he wasn't going to Christmasland, because that was the one thing he really, really wanted, and that's why it was the perfect punishment for him. You know, just the knowledge that he wasn't going to get to go to Christmasland, and up until the end, you know, he was convinced he was going to get to see it. So it was just really disappointing to me that he went out so quick. But yeah, so NOS4A2. I keep showing you the book just because I think it's a pretty cool cover. The mosquitoes don't really play a role in the story, but the license plate obviously does. And it's a really cool license plate, let's be real. All in all, I gave this book, personally, like 4.5 out of 5 stars, but if I were on a site like Goodreads, where I'm not allowed to give like half-star ratings, I would round it down to a 4 out of 5. But either way, I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I read it in like a week and a half or so, like, which is quick for me nowadays. I used to be able to read, you know, books like this in like 3 days, but that was when I was young and didn't have responsibilities, and, you know. Oh, sorry, I started thinking about a better time in my life. No, I'm just kidding. I really wholeheartedly recommend it. Obviously, you know, there's curse words, there's mentions of rape, there's mentions of drug use, so I can't remember, I don't think you actually see any in the book. Alcoholism, you know, pretty typical, I guess, for a book in this genre. The mentions of rape aren't very graphic, fortunately. It's more just like implied, so that's, you know, that's good for me. You know, you never want a scene that kind of pops up out of nowhere and puts you in an unsafe headspace, but I recommend it. I do not, just for the record, I do not recommend the TV show unless you are just like a big fan of Zachary Quinto, because he knocks it out of the park as Charlie Manx. The actress that plays Vic does good when she has good material. It's clear she's talented, it's just the writing for her and all the other teenage characters is just not very good. I didn't want to like get too critical on the show, but the character of Maggie in the TV show is atrocious. And Maggie only appears briefly in the book, but even so, she has such a big, vivid character in the book that in the show it's just very disappointing to see what they've turned her into. And they made a lot of changes, as most adaptations do, but I don't think they were changes for the better. Like, the whole first season is Vic as a teenager, whereas, you know, I think her teenage years ended at fairly in the beginning of this book. Like, just this small part, what is this? Like, 190 pages is just Vic's childhood and teenage years, and the rest is Vic's adult years. So they really, you could tell they were stretching out the material of Vic's childhood to make it one season on AMC, and there was a lot of filler content that just was not good. They tried to, it was like, there was like teenage romance, and it felt like some kind of CW TV show, not an AMC TV show based on, you know, a horror novel. So unless season 2 is like leagues better because it'll be focusing on Vic's adult life, I really, really don't recommend the TV show. But please go buy the book. It's awesome. It's well worth the money that I paid for it, and I'm cheap, as I said, so when I say that, you know I mean it. I definitely, you know, would definitely recommend this. So yeah, not so much a quickie review. I see that it's, you know, I think I've recorded at least 28 minutes of footage by now, so who knows how long this video will actually be. The next book I want to read is possibly The Institute by Stephen King. Or, I don't know, I started Dr. Sleep and I just never got around to finishing it, so I might actually read that one since the Dr. Sleep movie is coming out in November, because I'm very excited for that. I loved The Shining book. I had to clarify, I loved the book, not so much the movie, so I'm definitely excited to see Dr. Sleep. So I probably should read that one first. And if all goes according to plan, I will film another video talking about my thoughts on that book. And I don't know, unless you all don't care about my opinions, which is valid, you know, very valid. I'm kind of just a Stephen King fangirl, so not a lot I could say. But you know, if you don't care, if this video doesn't go over well, maybe I won't do any more book reviews. But I hope you liked this video for what it's worth. Have you read NOS4A2? Have you watched this show? What are your thoughts on it? Leave me a comment down below. But yeah, so like, comment, and subscribe if you would like. That would be super cool, and I will see y'all in my next video. Thank you for watching.